This is FBG Jen.
And FBG Kristen.
And I'm FBG Margot, host and producer. You're listening to the podcast that will help you keep a lid on the junk in the trunk and inspire you to live a happy and confident life.
Each episode, we chat with motivational experts and celebs and share our own candid adventures in being healthy.
If you're looking for a podcast that's equal parts hilarious and enlightening, well then welcome to the Fit Bottomed Girls podcast.
Ever wonder why some people can seem to eat well and work out regularly almost effortlessly? Do these people have more willpower? Are they born that way? Are they special? Well, we know how they did it. And it does have something to do with willpower, but not in the way that you think. So get the scoop at fitbottomedgirls.com/coaching. Welcome back to the Fit Bottom Girls podcast. This is FBG Margot, and on the line today we have FBG Jen.
Hello.
And we have FBG Kristen.
Hey.
And a lot of what puts this show together that's interesting to me anyway is the three of us live in three different areas. So we're constantly trying to figure out time zones and things like that when we have somebody on the show. And today our guest is Catherine Blyth, who's based in London. And she's a very busy journalist. And so to get this interview together, we all kind of had to move things around and make it happen. But her book is Enjoy Time, Stop Rushing, Get More Done. And I just really enjoyed this interview and I found it very inspiring.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree. And her book, if you are interested in kind of the science of what she gets into and just how we perceive time, I read her book, Enjoy Time, and it's fascinating. You can totally geek out over it.
And I wanted to ask you guys, how you view time because, well, I guess the cat's out of the bag, Jen, you're pregnant right now and with twins. So time must be really different for you now than it was, let's say 5 years ago.
Times. I have to say that being blessed with and then enduring a twin pregnancy, which likely by the time this comes out, the babies will be out and you can probably follow along with whatever insanity is happening in my life at Fit Bottomed Mamas.
If not, you're going to be in a medical journal. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, seriously. So I feel like during this part of it, which I'm now in my third trimester, I'm 33 weeks as of recording now, and they measured me and I measure I'm 44 weeks, which is we're off the scale of singleton time now in size. Time is slow. Time is really slow, just because of a lot of uncomfortableness. But then again, time is also super fast because I know that any day now I'm going to have 2 new people in my life, which is just crazy. But I have found that as becoming, and when I had my daughter, I felt this way too. The time really, really slowed down in some ways and sped up in other ways. And I found that specifically when it came to doing a lot of the work with Fit Bottom Girls was that it made me like a time monster. I could take an hour of time and it just really hunker down and get focused and make so much more of an hour than I could before, because it was such a precious commodity to me to have alone time to work. Yeah, it's just really, 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 really different and really fluid. What about you guys? Has it changed as you've gotten older?
I think time goes quickly.
I think about that all the time.
Yeah. I remember in high school, waiting to graduate high school, I remember it was it's 6 months away. That's so far. And now 6 months goes by in my life. It's I just turned my head and there it was. Do you know what I mean? I can't believe it. We're in summer right now. I can't believe it.
Yeah. And how much of that do you think is just proportional? Because 6 months now in relation to how many months we've lived is so much, that's much smaller than it was when we were 17 or 18, versus the fact that we just life is very different. It's not, and it's different. I think if you have children or if you're in a job, in education where things are done on the school year or things are very seasonal. Mm-hmm. But, when you've got stuff going all the time, it just it does feel like it flies.
I think it's a mix of both, because things do seem proportionally, it does make sense that you have a different perspective of time, but then again, like it does feel like life is like just faster in general.
Yeah. What do you guys do when you realize it's going by too fast and you're somewhere where you're like, no, I really want to appreciate this. I want to enjoy this time that I'm in right now.
I try to have my days that like a Saturday or a weekend, I try to really keep them unstructured and not filled with so much stuff to do, because then, that weekend goes by, you never had chance to kind of wind down. So I'm one of those people, like I can on the weekend have like one thing to do, either meet somebody for brunch or have a date or whatever. I can't do like movies and then a date or whatever. It's just, you know what I mean? Like it's not enough time for me to slow down, because I have several jobs. I teach fitness, and then I do this, and then I have a marketing company. So it's just, yeah, for me, especially on my weekends, I try to keep it to one thing.
Yeah. What about you, Jen?
I find that a lot of times, so, trying to be more generally mindful and breathing and actually being in the moment always helps, rather than trying to like run through my to-do list in my head, or I don't know, like paying attention to the things around me and thinking about, what needs to be picked up, or what's the thing I quote unquote should be doing or could be doing, and just kind of settle into what is. That's kind of like the ongoing, I feel like, life challenge and life practice that I always have and will continue to have. But the other thing is really just putting down the phone, because that's where there's such a time suck. I could spend, I don't know how many countless minutes and not even realize it. And they're gone, and I didn't really do anything. And I mean, yeah, very often I will stumble upon a really cool article and read it and share it. And that does lead to something. So it's not always time wasted, but a lot of times it is just kind of time wasted, where I could just, put my phone down and sit there and kind of just chill out. But there is kind of a natural, I think, tendency for all of us to want to fill up time.
Right.
And not just kind of be.
Yeah.
Kristen, I feel like you're really good about setting boundaries for like your work and your time. Although you do a lot of extracurricular activities.
Yeah. I think I set boundaries because otherwise none of it happens, because I have my days where, and like currently it's a little bit nuts because I'm coaching some adult learn to swim sessions. And then if I want to also do yoga that day, then I have to leave at a certain time. And that means that I have to cut off any work at a certain time, which means that I need to begin work at a certain time. So, and then I'm training for a half marathon. And so now like Saturday morning is now scheduled out so that I can get my longer runs in, which means that affects Friday night. So there are things that I will or will not do because I want to make sure that I can stick to that plan. But I think that practicing yoga pretty regularly has been one of the most helpful things for me, because it's a really good reminder that, I mean, I've gone to a lot of yoga classes and I've done a lot of it at home, and I've never come out of it and had something that had happened while I was in there that I could have affected the outcome of by like being on my phone and being available, and I don't think that I would be comfortable being unavailable to like my husband or to my parents for, really long periods of time. So like I'm always going to have, I'm pretty much always am going to have the ringer on if I can. But boy, it's a nice reminder that, for that hour or hour and a half, that I can be completely detached from all of that, and the world keeps going and I'm just here, and nothing that I think about, nowhere that my mind runs to is going to change anything externally or anything within me. So I may as well just like be there, be present, breathe, and appreciate like that exact moment.
Yeah, that's how I feel about teaching, because I can't be checking my phone or anything else. I got to teach. They're looking at me. Right. If my mind starts to wander, I start thinking about other things, I'm not doing my job. So I pick really great music and I just put myself in the zone. And for me, that is my time. Even though it's something I'm paid to do, it is something that I also find very beneficial mentally. I mean, I would do it for free. Don't tell them that, but I would.
Your secret is safe with us and
our thousands of listeners.
Hey, boss. Yeah. That's what makes you such a good instructor, Margot. That's for sure.
Yeah, if you would do it for free, I think that is like a sign, like it's something that it's something that you enjoy anyway. Am I good at it? Let's see. You can ask my students. Do you know what's really fun and good?
What?
Stickers.
Stickers!
We have Fit Bottom Girls stickers, you guys. So if you'd like some stickers, send us an email, podcast@fitbottomgirls.com, and we will drop them in the mail. Be sure to subscribe, review, check us out on social media at Fit Bottom Girls. If you get your podcast through Apple Podcasts, I don't know if you guys heard about this. iTunes is now going to be no more, and they're just going to have iTunes Music. They're going to have an Apple Podcast and something else for TV app. So if you get it through the Apple app, if you can leave a few stars and a nice review in there, we will read it on the air, and that'd be really, really awesome. And I say, let's just get right into our interview today with Catherine Blyth. In as little as 30 minutes, you can boost your willpower and find your true inner motivation to live a healthy life. Come join the Fit Bottom Revolution at fitbottomgirls.com/coaching and sign up for our online class, How to Amplify Your Willpower to Make Healthy Change. It's only $8 and you can save 20% when you use the code FBG podcast. So sign up at fitbottomgirls.com/coaching today. Catherine Blyth has written for publications including The Times, Daily Telegraph, Sunday Telegraph, Spectator, Elle, Glamour, and The Daily Mail. She's also appeared on a variety of shows for radio and television. Her acclaimed book, The Art of Conversation, was translated into 8 languages. As an editor, she had the pleasure of working with authors such as Hilary Mantel, Ann Patchett, Virginia Ironside, and Carol Shields. She is here today to talk about her newest book, Enjoy Time, Stop Rushing, Get More Done. Welcome to the show, Catherine.
Hi.
Hello. Thank you for joining us today. This is FBG Margot, and on the line today we have FBG Jen, and we have FBG Kristen. Catherine, I'm going to ask you the first question. You wrote Enjoy Time because you have said that you were at a point in your life where you always felt rushed and that there was not enough hours in the day to tackle your to-do list. So what was your first key breakthrough for you in learning how to manage your time better?
Well, I suppose the real paradox for me, and I think for many people, is that why do we feel so rushed? You know, just simply asking that question, drilling down and analyzing what my day consists of, that I should feel so darn busy that I'm constantly chasing this runaway to-do list that only seems to grow longer, no matter how fast I run. And at the same time, the paradox is that we have this capacity to do more things than ever, faster than ever. I mean, here I am having a conversation with 3 wonderful women strewn all over the United States in seconds. In many ways, we live in an age of miracles, that the space-time barrier has collapsed and we can do so many things so much faster at the touch of a button, any time of day or night. So simply asking the question, why are we in this paradoxical situation? And then thinking about the answers. And it struck me suddenly that actually we live in this world without limits. But the trouble is we haven't been reared to manage that responsibility, to solve the problem of living in a world without limits. A, you have to accept that you do now have to manage your time actively. And B, that you need to impose some limits of your own. As soon as I felt that, actually, or reminded myself the basic truth, which is we are all living in our own time. It is up to us to decide how we use it, to feel like I was restoring an element of choice in my life rather than this feeling of being hunted and having to chase the clock. I found it easier to start asking more critical questions, to examine what made me so busy, what was the busyness really all about, and to start taking some practical steps to edit and to feel more in charge.
So I gotta ask, I've read your book, and there is so much information and so much research that's in there, so much detail that's so rich with information. And I have to imagine that writing it and putting it all together was such a labor of love and a lot of organization, and probably took a lot of time. So what I want to know is, did you ever have a few moments where you were like, oh my gosh, I'm writing about time and this is ironic and I need more time? And I just think that's fascinating.
Okay, well, the whole book is born out of paradoxes. So the starting point for getting involved in this subject was me, a writer, wondering what to do next. I just had a baby and I couldn't make up my mind, because time, when you have a small child, it suddenly melts and does all sorts of strange things. And there doesn't seem to be an uninterrupted half hour anywhere. And so I found it very difficult to decide exactly what I wanted to do, because I was so anxious that I shouldn't waste my precious time on the wrong project. So I just kept having idea after idea after idea and found it very difficult to commit to anything. And then one day I was sitting in a cafe, breastfeeding, feeling like hell, but also slightly enjoying the fact that I just didn't feel self-conscious. I looked awful. And there was my beautiful son in my arms. And I was looking across the room, and there was that guy who's now quite a famous film star, Jamie Dornan, who's in the 50 Shades series.
Oh, yeah.
He was wearing a tight white t-shirt, looking rather good, doing some sort of masculine posturing, so you could really get the benefit of his pectoral shape. And I was kind of objectifying him, enjoying the sight, but also this general sense of existential breakdown. And then I looked on my phone, and there was an email from someone I'd never heard of, at a publisher, saying, I just read this magazine column you wrote about procrastination. Would you be interested in writing about the subject? And so naturally, I took several weeks to consider my reply, procrastinating, and realized that I didn't want to write a book about procrastination. I thought, actually, my problems, yes, they're personal to me, but there's been a universal shift in the culture. So much has changed about our relationship with time, and I just wanted to get obsessed with it. So I did. And then I spent 3 years thinking about it and writing a proposal for a longer book about time called On Time, which is a kind of one of those books that's long enough to sit down and read it, in serious chapter-like way, or it's also designed to be read guerrilla style. So if you are very busy, but you have a particular problem or issue that is relevant to you, you can just dart into that chapter and you'll get something out of it. So then coming to write a book called Enjoy Time, it's like a refinement on that book. And the style of this one is it's set up in 20 lessons. So taking different themes and then providing some solutions. So it really is the kind of book where you could just open it at any page and get stuck in. So although it's quite a short book, as I think it was Montaigne said when he wrote to someone, I would have written you a shorter letter, but I didn't have the time. This is a short book, taken up an awful lot of time. And yes, did I miss my deadline? I'd like to say no, but that's not the case. I'm still tussling with these issues, but it's been, a very interesting journey. And I can't say I've met anyone who doesn't agree that they feel too busy or that there's some addictiveness or something strange has happened to time in their lives. So I'm very pleased that all my efforts have some kind of resonance with all sorts of people.
They certainly do. And I'm also going to say that I love the idea of guerrilla reading. I feel like I need more books that fit that description in my life.
They
because
call
that's
stories, but they're not so popular with publishers because they. But yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Chopped into ever smaller portions, don't you think?
Yes. Like, let me just sit down and read it for a second while I'm, stirring something, and then be able to come back to it later. Perfect.
I think it's a particularly female condition to think that the only way to be a brilliant woman is to try and impersonate one of those Hindu goddesses with a dozen arms.
Yes.
Who do all these things wonderfully without, breaking a sweat. But, one of the happy discoveries for me in this book was that multitasking is like the fastest way to screw things up, really. If we looked at it critically, all these things that we think make us busy and effective are often making us slower and less effective. And just taking your time and being a bit more conscious about exactly what you want to do and just investing in it is extremely effective. And also, you don't feel that time's rushing by in that quite the same way. You don't get so distracted. You don't feel so drained by it. I mean, there's so many, if you are inherently a lazy person, I've definitely got that in me. I think there's a lot to confirm that that's actually the best way to live. Albeit getting fit and getting everything you want done too. I'm trying to find a way through my conflicting desires, and the science, I think, backs me up. I don't know what factoids jumped out as you as surprising, but a lot of the data that I discovered surprised me.
Absolutely. So what you were just saying really takes me to my question is, it's really about shifting that mindset, because we are really conditioned to believe that rushing is the way to accomplish more. And it does take, a conscious shift in how we view what success and what efficient looks like in order to make that change. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the steps that you would suggest to somebody for making that shift. How can they really kind of retrain their brain to understand that they are going to get more done if they're not just rushing like crazy to get to the next thing all the time?
Well, I suppose, practical actions are always more powerful than lists of proof. So, first thing I'd advise, obviously, is to read my book, and then it will spell it out for you. I think just getting a reality check, if you can find the time to just take note of what you're actually doing, what does your day consist of over a week or so, stand back, read the truth, see what's actually getting done, what is devouring your time, are you as busy as you really believe? And then looking at how the day is organized and sequenced and doing a bit of a life edit. I think if we start thinking of our time as chunks of time and have an appreciation of how our sense of time and our abilities shift over the course of the day, simply changing the order in which we do things can have an enormous benefit. Willpower, like your attention span, it's like a muscle. So it weakens over the course of the day. If we appreciate that we are most effective, most creative, most resourceful and able to tackle tough creative tasks at the beginning of the day, and we protect those hours and assign our most important or demanding tasks to the first 2 or 3 hours of our working day, each minute can, be worth 2 or 3 later in the day. Really simple changes for me. Things like putting your time feeds in quarantine. As soon as you don't allow yourself to get into kind of dopamine loop of excitement, checking your phone every 5 minutes, if you consciously put it into a different room, or say, okay, at the end of 1 hour of, intensive concentration, I will give myself 5 minutes to check that, rather than having that sense, what we were talking about earlier, the continuous partial attention where your mind is kind of hovering over your phone and your eyes drifting off of that place. If we really allow ourselves to focus and make, create a space in which it's much easier to focus, shut the door, turn off the music, try and avoid hot desking and open plan if you possibly can. Simple changes like that will start producing results. I find that, distraction is the biggest enemy, partly because of my work and I need to be creative and solitary, really, and protect myself from these enticing distractions. So, there are many ways you can create that space, and becoming a bit more aware of distinguishing between the feeling that you're overloaded and actually being busy. And a lot of the time when we feel very busy, and that sort of slightly panicked state, when your heart rate seems to go up and you can't quite focus, that again can be strangely addictive. But what is causing it? Is it that there's too much to do, or is it that you aren't really finishing anything? One of the factoids that I don't actually like that word, maybe just one of the bits of information that I came across that really struck a chord was that we obviously, many of us work online or using phones or internet, email. What few of us are aware of is that when we are texting or emailing or just scanning the computer, very often we stop breathing. We hold our breath unconsciously, or breathe more shallowly, and that enacts a change in our bodies, and it puts us into a state which is similar to fight or flight mode. And when you enter fight or flight mode, you tend to think a bit differently. You enter what's known as a cognitive tunnel. You're much less likely to think in a creative or deep way. You're more likely to grab anything that feels like a solution. So you just simply, the technology we use can precipitate that slightly panicky, busy feeling without necessarily helping us, develop the tools to resolve it. If you are a text messaging kind of addict, most of us are, simply because that, again, your body is or your brain is trained to be excited by novelty, we are intensely distractible as human beings. That's one of our key traits. It's one of the reasons our species is so good at surviving, because our ancestors would, if they saw, heard a crunch in the forest nearby, they'd look up and see the predator and not get eaten by it. But being aware of how distractible you are and how much you need to protect your attention, and how simple it can be to do that. That's a major tip. The other thing I think is to bear in mind is that habits compose a large part of our day. Apparently 40% of our day is simply repeated actions and events. Now, a lot of people find it very hard to change habits. We think it's almost impossible. But actually, become aware of the habits you have and think critically about them. You can find that even if you have some very unhelpful habits, it's easier to change them than you might think if you displace a slightly unhelpful habit with a good one. I'm trying to use habits to shift some of my own behaviours. The biggest risk to any author's life is having a heart attack because you spend all your time sitting around on your bottoms. I haven't been doing enough exercise, so to change that, I've been trying to use habits, automating the behaviour to get into my sports kit in the morning. So I'm not questioning whether or not I'm going to fit the exercise in today, and booking the class in advance, using pre-commitments and habits to kind of enact change in your life. It's very powerful. And the best thing about it is you don't need to think very much. So you're not taxing that fragile willpower. I could go on and on, but I feel like I should let you ask me another question.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, guys. My Roomba just went off talking about distractions, so I had to run over and turn it off.
Okay. Hilarious. Well, I'm glad you improved quick. I thought I'd stunned you into silence.
No, for some reason it just sort of. So sorry, you guys. So my question for you. So I'm a New Yorker, and people love to fetishize how busy they are in New York. I'm just always so busy. It's so obnoxious. It's one of our worst habits. But what you often hear is, well, you know what? Time is money. Time is money. And you say time is not money. Time is your life. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, our culture thrives on the belief that we need to convert every minute into productive activity for which we're paid. The thing about that is, as much money as I'd like to have in the bank, it doesn't actually make me happier or healthier or anything else. As soon as you start mortgaging your day for the hope of filling up enough numbers in the bank account before you start living, you're living at a kind of remove from your reality. I mean, I argue that being productive and enjoying what you do and being completely present within it is hindered often by the reward mechanisms we use. I sound like I'm being a Buddhist and a communist. There is a kind of pro-capitalist argument for focusing not on money and what time can bring you, but on really enjoying deeply what you do. Because when we're doing something that grips our attention fully, we're not thinking about those secondary incentives. They tend to choke off motivation. I mean, there's a huge amount of psychological research that shows that when you start introducing rewards to people for doing things, whether it's rewarding a child or promising them a prize for doing a nice artwork or adding a big fat bonus, although our culture trains us to see these as the best validations of our humanness and our effort, in fact, they remove our ability to sink into a task and be creative and enjoy it. As far as time is money goes on a kind of day-to-day level, one thing I found really interesting researching this subject is that, generally speaking, although you'd think that people who are very well paid are more likely to have high quality leisure time, in fact, the best paid people are ones with the least amount of leisure. And do they therefore enjoy their lives more? I don't know. One of the reasons for that is because the more we are paid per hour, the less disposable our time feels to us. So you're much less likely, if you're very well paid or expect to be very well paid, you're much less likely to feel that it's okay to spend more time with your family. I mean, there's a heartbreaking statistic about people who identify themselves as very busy. They are far more likely to cut back on time with their family or time with hobbies than they are on work. So you can, because as soon as you start equating your time with your earnings, you find it much more difficult to actually do the things that repay you and fulfill you and actually perhaps make you more effective and creative. I mean, needs must. I'm not going to say that we should all stop working for money. I work for money too. But it's very helpful for us to have a slightly broader scale of values when we're thinking about our choices in time. I think many people find it hard to say no to work. And being a freelancer, as more and more of us are, myself included, you feel even more panic stricken that, perhaps there won't be another opportunity if you say yes to this one. It's hugely important for us all to be able to think about what value time brings us to. We don't just need fast, intensive work time to be happy. We'll burn out. We need to value our time with our family, or doing nothing, or going for a walk and just enjoying the smell of the flowers, and give that as much of a value as those paid hours, which our society tells us are most important. Why are anxiety levels so high? Why are people in richer countries not happier? And all the research shows that they're not. Well-being crosses a whole spectrum of needs, and bank balances don't directly pour happiness and fulfillment into our souls. So I'm just as you might want to say to someone who spends all their time on Facebook, well, when you're on your deathbed, are you really going to remember all those likes you got? Or are you going to remember the memories you made with the few friends who you actually made time to meet up with? By the same token, will the defining achievement of our lives be that we got those 15 promotions, or would it be that we felt connected, that we find time to give, to be happy? There are huge questions behind the time is money thing, but the fact is that money you can always get more of, but time, I'm afraid, is a non-transferable quantity, and we're all getting older.
So you had mentioned earlier that when you're writing this book that it was full of surprises, and I think probably in our conversation here you've touched on some of those, but are there any other big surprises that stand out that just kind of blew you away?
I love all the nerdy science stuff. So, one big question for me, it's a small detail, but it's kind of significant. Why does time seem faster in some days and some places than others? What's going on? And just understanding that your brain chemicals have a huge role in how fast time feels. When you're in a panic, or when something really terrifying happens and time seems to slow down, well, that's because the adrenaline going through your body means that you're firing out more neurons, and that means that time therefore seems relatively slow. Why does time seem faster when you're happy, and yet you remember those happy occasions in so much detail and depth? Well, that's because dopamine, although your attention sort of flips about when you're really happy, so it can seem like the clock's spinning at double speed. When you're looking back, dopamine's also helped you to form much more detailed, specific memories. So things like that I found delightful. And on a more sinister note, have you never had this experience? Say you're in an exercise class and everyone's trying to do a movement and they're out of whack, and then suddenly they all synchronize. And when you're walking down the street in New York, everyone seems to walk so much faster, but it's really hard to cut against the pace. That's because of a phenomenon called entrainment, where we sort of tend to think into the beat of our environment. In other words, we're all surrounded by powerful influences on our pace and tempo. And not only do they change the speed at which we move, but they also change the speed at which time seems to go. And that will actually change how we behave. Rushing about, it makes us feel vital and active and get more done, but it also makes us more likely to get into a slightly panicky, tunnel-minded state, which can be great if you want to get to the end of a particular task. Deadlines are really useful. They're not the enemy. On the other hand, it can mean that it's harder to take a step back and look at the substance of your life. I don't know. There are so many things that I found surprising and useful. And just being reminded that we're all just simple animals made of chemicals, but we can take control. That's the ultimate delight of it for me, that you can actually step back and say, well, how much of my life, or my unhappiness stems from an attitude towards time. I mean, that seems an absurd proposition, but if you actively cultivate kind of a negative expectations of your life, and if you always remember things that happened to you that were bad, you're much more likely to remain in that state. So, your beliefs about time can have a powerful effect on your day to day as your ability to plan a decent schedule or to prioritize. So I just kept being shocked at how much our beliefs about time and our use of it kind of permeate our lives and can change our outcomes for the better or for the worse.
So how are we on time? I've kind of lost track.
I've got at least 7 minutes. I could stretch to 10.
Okay. So Jen and Margot, do either of you guys have a pressing question that you'd like to get in before we do the final round of questions, like the normal ones?
Why don't we do one and then we'll do last question?
Yeah, let's do that.
So
Okay.
who wants to go?
Go for it, Kristen.
So can you tell me, is there any specific thing that you do in the morning or maybe at a different point of your day to really make sure that you're putting what you're preaching into practice? Like, do you have any sort of morning routine or anything that really sets you up for success in this way?
Okay. Well, so I have children and I have a husband who works in a different city. So sometimes he's there and sometimes that doesn't make things any simpler and sometimes it helps. But generally speaking, my mornings look like an absolute mess. And, I can feel myself entering kind of altered state where a bit like Alzheimer's where, why am I trying to do 15 things at once? All the things that I'd rather avoid, but multitasking is kind of built into the situation when you have small children running around refusing to do what you need them to do at the moment they need to do it. So once I am alone and free of those children, it can be delightful, but I can be drenched in cortisol and really stressed out. And so I always take a moment before I get down to work to just take 5 or 10 minutes to do something that I want to do that has absolutely no purpose or relevance, but will just allow me to feel calm and in charge. That would be taking a walk or having a coffee, probably without caffeine, because I don't need any more kind of high energy by that stage, and reading a book or thinking about something utterly irrelevant. And that just helps me to reset. Of course, it's tempting to start doing to-do lists at that point in time. But the other thing I try to do is write the to-do list the night before. That's been massively important. Write the to-do list of the absolute essential things you need to get done that day, and do not allow yourself to add a single item to that list the next day. Instead, what you have is like a contingency slot. Maybe one in the morning, one in the afternoon, where you'll deal with all those things that have come up that you weren't expecting to deal with. But, in other words, that's a really easy way to make sure that you're not thrown off track. I try to be strict about allowing myself to feel kind of happy and relaxed before I get down to business. And I think it really works.
Okay, so we just can you please tell people in our audience where they can find you on the web and social media?
Well, so I'm on Instagram some of the time, but I have to say it's not been the top of my to-do list. So there is actually updating that. And on Instagram, I'm that Catherine Blyth. And on Twitter, I'm something different. I'm Catherine F. Blyth. And then I have a website with catherineblyth.com. But yes, I've just moved house and got two books going on. So I'm afraid social media has been one of those things that I've slightly edited. But I'm sure that once I've got my fitness habit on stream, I will then get a proper social media habit and beef it up a bit. I'm always welcome to suggestions and comments, and anyone can get in touch with me via those and tell me how I could enjoy time more or what they've done to enjoy time more. Because as I say, the message of this book is by enjoying time, you get to be more productive. You will get more done. It isn't the enemy and it isn't money. It's just day to day, those moments that seem irretrievable. And if we let go of the belief that busyness is the answer to all human endeavor and happiness and take charge and don't feel like we're chasing the clock, it can have a radical effect on how we travel through those happy minutes of our day.
And then we just have one more very quick question for you. We ask this of everybody that appears on the show.
Okay.
What was the last song you listened to before you did this podcast interview?
Oh, really, really tough question. Does it count what my daughter was singing?
Sure. Anything that sticks out.
Oh, golly. I can't answer that question. I can't, because there's so much music in my house, but it's mostly instrumental because they play the cello. The Gavotte by Lully, that's a good one. One thing we're really enjoying is Adele. She's singing Adele. Someone Like You is my favorite. Rolling in the Deep is my children, so I'll go for Rolling in the Deep. Oh. You can edit very not quick response to what
we get the best answers from that one, because people do have to kind of stop and think, like, yeah, what was I doing? Like, what was I listening to? So that it's a great answer. So thank you so much. We know you're busy, and we appreciate you making the time for us today.
I'm working on. It's been lovely talking to you, and I'm hoping to get fit bottoms just like you.
Love this show? Tell us why in a 5-star review on iTunes, and we'll read it on the air. Also, make sure you are a subscriber. If you want to reach out to say hi or have a question about a recent episode, yay, well, feel free to email us at podcast@fitbottomgirls.com. And if this podcast jives perfectly with your brand, consider sponsoring the show. Get more info by emailing advertising@fitbottomgirls.com. Find all kinds of Fit Bottom goodness online and on social media at Fit Bottom Girls, Fit Bottom Mamas, Fit Bottom Eats, and Fit Bottom Zen. And if books and movies are your thing, check out the other podcast I co-host called Book versus Movie, which you can find anywhere where you search for podcasts. Thanks for listening.